Hey there, it's Steve. I want to go over the plasma moon flat earth model in a 3D environment. So, the plasma moon theory is the idea that the moon is a reflection of Earth, the dark spots being the land and the lighter spots being the ocean. Now, what this means is that we can roughly plot out a map of where the continents we know are and the continents that we don't know are. For example, in the model, you see that we have Lumeria up on here next to China, Russia, close to Canada, Mexico. And we have a lot of land over here. So, using logical deduction, we know the land that we do know and we can orient ourselves around that. What makes this model hold scientific credibility is that it's based on that polar projection Gleason. So, for example, the sun's analemma, because it does that path, what that means is we need a model that can hold up to those scientific first principles, or it needs a way to explain that away. For example, this is how we know the polar center Gleason projection is an accurate flat Earth model because of that analemma. It's shorter in the North Pole, it's larger out in the south. Now, the plasma moon model adheres to that. So, what I want to go over is then how the North Pole works, because that's what's going to confuse a lot of people right now. What happens is there is the pole shift, but the way it works is that pole there cycles through. So right now, instead of it being there, it would eventually shift down there. And what that means is the sun would also start orbiting there. So those circles actually would move. So essentially our equator, our Tropic of Cancer, our Tropic of Capricorn, those would shift with us. And what the theory states is it's why land is given time to regrowth, rejuvenate, and the Earth system that's been created for us is able to sustain itself forever through these natural cycles because the poles will shift through. I think it's 26,000 years. I could be wrong, but that's how long it would take for it to cycle right back to where you could say the magnetic north is right back there. So then, whether there's actually a physical Mount Meru or not, how is this magnetic north created? We don't necessarily know. Now, the Vibes of Cosmos model takes that away. So, for example, on the Gleason model, you can have a physical Mount Meru. Here, you're not going to unless it physically moves, although that's not really as likely. What's important, though, to understand on this framework is the reason why we get that side by side photo. Why does the moon seem to have a 1-to-1 projection of Earth? This is from what the theory calls the black sun. Now, I think this is an important correspondence to make because the idea of the black sun has also been talked about in Eastern cosmology as Ketu and Rahu. So Ketu and Rahu, one of them is red, one of them is black, but it can be argued that from a Western esoteric point that the black sun is either Ketu or Rahu. So that's very important to understand, and this orbits underneath us and is part of the reason we get the moon phases. It can be used for eclipses, but the argument is that because it's shining through Earth and is making the moon, that's part of the important part here, is that it's making the moon. And that's why we end up seeing the map of our flat Earth. So it's also important to know that our moon doesn't rotate. you can argue it's concave, but what I'm trying to say is that, for argument's sake, the moon is flat. You know, there is no other side to the moon. I think you guys understand that. You can't physically go to the moon, you can't land on it, and there's no other side to it because it is our Earth projected up onto the dome, and the way a parabolic reflection works, you get that focus point, and that's what we see. And that does seem to actually be what we see in real life. So, where it gets interesting is that you can then argue that the position of this black sun allows for the phases of the moon or the different orbits, and we have this now to incorporate into the celestial mechanics. So I think that's one of the very important things in the plasma moon framework. It's not just that we have a different map, it's that everyone who talks about the theory will know what you're saying when you mention the black sun. It's a critical part of the theory, and the original author, or I guess the guy who made it popular, goes by a name Vibes of Cosmos. His framework has the black sun. So that's very important. This is part of the theory, and everyone will be using it. So it's not just the larger map. And if you can kind of see up in the photo here, see how there's that green center, and then over there's that red center? So you can see where the geographic pole is. That would be the center of Earth, and then the magnetic pole is what shifts around. So going back to the map, this is the magnetic pole right here, and the geographic pole would be roughly right there. So does that make sense? It's a very interesting framework because it also puts into perspective how Antarctica is. So you see here how Antarctica surrounds us on a bunch of these islands. Well, we know what the globe model claims for geography, but what if we consider all these longitudes so we know how they're spread out, and then just plot it on our flat Earth map? What do we get? I think that's really, really cool. So you then see, for example, how there's a whole bunch of Chinese bases out on Lemuria, all along this coast here. And that makes sense. So anyone in North Korea, South Korea, Japan who goes too far, going to Antarctica without a permit, accidentally going to a restricted area, the military's right there to get you, and it's like that for the whole world. So no matter where you're trying to escape off to, there'll be some military base. So I think there's like a Swedish or German troll base. They call it a troll base. So that's up on Atlantis right here. Now, was it North Atlantis? Did the moon have it marked? I think it is North Atlantis. It's just hard to read. But that would be right there as well. So then where is North Atlantis? So, yeah, that's a bunch of African countries. So I guess the closest place would be like Nigeria. If you're out in Nigeria, if you try to head out, you got the military there. Now this is why I think the 3D models are really, really cool. If you notice in the bottom left and right hand corner, these are joysticks. So for example, see right here in the bottom left hand corner, I can move that. So on your touch screen tablet or your phone, you can have the same type of interaction that you're seeing right now on my screen. It's absolutely fascinating. And then just using your like finger to touch, that's literally how you would look. So that controls the camera, you could call it, of the first person environment, and then the joystick over on your right hand side, that's your elevation. So you see how I can slide it to go up, increase my field of vision, my perspective, or I can go right back down to the ground and see how what I could have saw before starts to disappear. And you can really navigate through this and get a feel for how the Earth would work under the plasma moon framework. And it's really, really fascinating. So if you guys are interested in us releasing this as an app, just let me know in the comments. It would be essentially what you see here. This is one of the research tools that I use as a senior flat earth researcher. I need these types of 3D environments so I can model stuff and get a feel for how it all works. So I hope you guys understand the plasma moon framework. The firmament would still exist and it would just cover this bigger area out here. Nothing really changes in terms of GPS. You still got your north center there, and as you go out, for example, the equator, Tropic of Cancer, the Antarctic Circle, so I would assume that would be 60 degrees south. And then the edge of the known Earth, what everyone agrees to, goes farther, goes to 90 south latitude. So if this is 60 right here, you could imagine that the known land cuts off right there. So I think what I'm going to do in the app is mark off this so it's more clear. So you can see, for example, where would 120 degrees south latitude be. So that doesn't exist on globe mapping platforms because 90 degrees is the bottom of this ball, but once it's flattened out, you can now go past it. You can go to the land they don't want you to see. So that's what makes the Vibes of Cosmos framework, the plasma moon map, so profound, because you have the known land, but it's flattened out in such a way that you can go farther south in latitude than what they want you to know about. And it's all based upon scientific first principles. It's based on the moon being a map of the Earth and then deducing out all the land from that. And it still holds true to the analemma. You know, we have that Gleason north center polar projection, which is a foundation that is wonderful to adhere to because it matches all scientific observation. So to build off of that and allow us to go to land that we wouldn't know about that exists is what's so powerful and so fascinating. Why would they lie about flat Earth? This is a perfect reason why, and it gives you a visual comparison. You can see just how much land is out here at, let's say, 150, 200 degrees south latitude. The globe only goes to 90 degrees south latitude. You understand what I mean, right? The equator, that's 0 degrees south latitude, and you go down. The Antarctic Circle, you know, where you need a permit to enter, that's 60 degrees south latitude. And then as you go to the little pole, that is your 90 degrees south latitude. But when you're on a flat Earth, the concepts are completely different. There is no physical South Pole. There is infinite directions on this toroidal radial field, and as you go out in these different directions, you're actually surrounded by a whole bunch of military bases. You must stay within the small little approved area. If you want to go outside, you know, this red circle here, you need a permit or you'll go to jail. And I'm not kidding. You can go on Google. I encourage you to do this because I've checked for every country. So to clarify, it's not just the Antarctic Treaty. The Antarctic Treaty makes the countries enforce the legislation. So go on Google, type in Australia Antarctic permit, and read what it says. Do that for New Zealand. Do it for Canada. Like, do it. Canada, Antarctica permit. Read what it says, and it'll say, you citizens of Canada. So they get you by your citizenship. So, for example, if I'm a citizen of Canada, I need to get Canada's approval to conduct a flat Earth university experiment. And if I don't, I get arrested and I go to jail. So that's how they keep this type of knowledge trapped in. You're not allowed to go past this red line without specific government approval. And if you even try to, you'll be stopped by a whole bunch of militaries. Every country's in on it. If they've signed the Antarctic Treaty, they would be aware of the extra land. There would be no real way for them not to. So you can look at this map here and it kind of makes sense. Like India is in on it, and we really didn't know why until recently when they did their fake moon landing. You can look into this. India did their fake moon landing many months ago, and it was very fake. It looks just as real as my model did. It was complete CGI. But the fact they did that is because they're now part of it. They're on the in. And once you're in on it, you can start faking space and doing all that fun stuff. So yeah, this is a fascinating model. Let me know if you're interested in it. Let me know if you have any questions on it. Have a wonderful day.